Welcome everyone to Tales from the 90s. This is the podcast where we talk all things 90s. Pop culture, television, movies, video games, books, toys, you name it. Anyway, we've finally made our way through 6 months through a year. And if you don't know the format, I pick a random month and a random year from the 90s. We don't go linear, we just jump all around. Anyway, this will be the 6th time we've been in 1992. We're going to go back to February, so let's go. Now, before we get into that, I want to mention there's going to be a bonus episode. Not exactly sure when it's going to be out, but it should be out sometime in June. It's called Mothers and Fathers. I'm going to be talking about my mom and dad, because I didn't do one for Mother's Day because I was saving them both for Father's Day, so I have one, all in one. And my wife will actually be recording a portion of it for hers too, and it'll be either mixed in or at the end, however decided to do it. I haven't recorded it yet, obviously. But another feature or video video series, I guess, that I got coming out is going to be called Tales from the Albums. Because I was thinking the other day, because there's certain albums that are like, either big in an artist's career or big in my life. So I'm going to be going through the album. I may play a couple seconds from each song, but not going to play the whole song because of copyright strikes everywhere on that one. But and just going through it song by song, and memories I have of it, or what I like about the song, or if I don't like the song. But usually with these albums, 99% of the songs on it I'm gonna like. That's why I put it on there. The first one I'm gonna be doing is a huge album in country history. It's Randy Travis' The Storms of Life, his very first album. That was when everything in country changed from the more pop country back to traditional, and of course it would get back to now it's out of control. But that's what I'll be talking about whenever. I'm not sure when I'll record that. The new Jackasses of the Week will be coming soon. Look for that, when I rant about everything. And you never know what you'll get on here. Crackhead Dave video, playing a video game, music, just all kinds of whatever I feel like putting on here. I'm going to do karaoke and wrestling tomorrow, so look for those videos soon. But anyway, you're not here for any of that. You're here for Tales from the 90s. Again, this is where we talk about the 90s. This week we're going to start off. I have a lineup for Saturday morning cartoons and for Saturday Nickelodeon. Sometimes on here I will do a lineup from a different day on Nickelodeon, but this week I decided to do a Saturday so that way I can get cartoons and the Nickelodeon lineup in. And what I do is I go through, it's like this fandom website. It's called like Fandom or something like that. I hate it because it slows my computer down. But anyway, they list the full lineups from the time period, so you can get accurate of what was on. Because I remember a lot from the 90s, but remembering what order anything was on, especially on a given day, that's like hard to do. But anyway, I chose a random day. We're going to go with February 8th of 1992. This was, I believe, the second Saturday of the month. We'll start off with ABC. Now, so I've talked about some of these cartoons and shows before on here. So if you hear me say, I've never seen that before, and move on, it's just because I've never seen it. I'm not going to give my thoughts of something I don't know what I'm talking about. I could look it up, but I wouldn't be giving you my history of it or anything I knew. Just out, anybody can look up something. That doesn't make it a podcast if you just look up stuff. But anyway, ABC, we start off with The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I never really got into Winnie the Pooh. My wife loves it. Huge Tigger fan, but I never got into that. But one I did was The Land of the Lost, the 1991 version. Do not like the one from the 70s, just too weird. I love the one from the 90s. I first saw that on Nickelodeon, but it was originally on Saturday morning TV. Darkwing Duck, I know that's a big popular one, but I never really watched it all that much. Just never did. It wasn't like Like, I chose to not watch it. It's just either I was watching something else or just don't have many memories of it. But at 9:30 we got Beetlejuice, the animated series. I love that one. I've talked about before, I didn't really care for the Beetlejuice movie. I've never even seen the second one, but I love the Beetlejuice cartoon. And then we've got Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters. See, that's where we're going to have some problems with people, because Ghostbusters are like monumental films, and this cartoon was. But I remember seeing a few episodes of the cartoon, but I didn't really care for the Ghostbuster movies. I know, kill me now. But I don't know, just never really cared for them that much. I remember watching them, and you know, there's certain scenes from them that are funny or I like, but you know, as a whole, you know, I can't even remember the full plot of the movie other than they're busting ghosts, and of course everybody knows the song. Then we got the Pirates of Dark Water. I don't know what that is exactly. And then we got the Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show. One of our ongoing things on here is how many variations of Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies can we get in a lineup. There's one for today, Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show. Which, of course, in all reality was just Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, you know, put in there with emphasis on Bugs Bunny and Tweety, but they had the other ones too. It's just, you know, just they cut them from different ones, and, you know, there's so many Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies that you can make up as many shows. You can still be making up shows today and not have the same combinations twice. But we'll move on to CBS, and we got Muppet Babies. Had to do it. The Great Muppet Babies. I love that cartoon. That was one of my favorites. First saw that on Nickelodeon too. We got Mother Goose. That's another running thing that should be on here, is how many words can I mess up. Mother Goose and Grimm, which I've never seen, but I'm guessing is based on Mother Goose and Grimm's Fairy Tales. So that sounds like something that would be interesting. Then we got an hour of Garfield and Friends. Love that cartoon. Of course, I like the Garfield portion just as much as all his friends on the farm. And then we've got an hour of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I named my #1, which you can find that episode on here, my top 50 Saturday morning kids TV, because it's cartoons and TV shows. But my #1 of all time is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Love that cartoon. Love the movies from the 90s. The concert from New York City in 1990. Just love the Turtles. All those toys. Someday I'm going to do one, once I'm done with all the 90s. I'll go back through the 80s. I don't know. I'll probably go year by year, not month by that, because the reason I do the 90s so much is I remember it mostly. I was... Let's see, I turned 7 in 1990, so I was 6 and under during the 80s, so you don't have a ton of memories from then, but, you know, 7 on, especially in teenage years, that's why I remember it so much. That's why if I do the 80s, I'll be doing, but of course, there was Turtles toys in the 90s, too, but I mean, you know, that was a juggernaut, all the toys they pumped out, and they weren't just like little crappy, oh, well, let's put some stuff out because it's a fad. Those were some good toys. The Technodrome. Man, I always wanted a Technodrome. Almost everybody I knew had a Turtles van. That thing was awesome. Anyway, back to the podcast with Back to the Future, the cartoon. Never watched. Didn't care for the Back to the Future movie. You're going to find that with a lot of things. A lot of things I've never seen or cared for. I've never even seen E.T., okay? I know you're all putting a freaking pitchforks and they're going to all come and get me for some of these things, but anyway, at 11:30, Where's Waldo? I don't remember the cartoon much, but everybody remembers those books. After the first 3 or 4 pages, I was out. Only the smart people and the people that with attention to detail ever found Waldo after those pages. I couldn't. And forget the last one. Whew. If you don't know those books, it's a little guy in a red and white shirt with like black glasses, and I think he had a red and white hat too. I mean, I don't know if he had it all the time. Anyway, they would put him in this, you know, picture with all these other things and people and stuff, and you have to spot him. And at first, it's kind of easy, but then it gets harder and harder until it's like I sit there and stare at the book all day long. Then we'll move to Fox, which had, I don't know if it was this year or the year before, it just started their Fox Kids TV. But at 8, we had Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which I've seen an episode of that recently. I've been watching old. If you look on YouTube, they have blocks of TV shows and like Saturday morning cartoons, and I've seen a bunch of them I've never seen before. So things that I've said I've never seen before, if they come up again on the podcast, I may say, well, I've seen an episode. It's, of course, based on the movie, and I've never seen that, but the song always played on the Halloween channel on Music Choice, so I always I love the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes song. It's hilarious. Then at 8:30, we got Bobby's World, the original Fox Kids cartoon. Love that one. Howie Mandel, of course. Basically him as a kid, and just like this world of make-believe that he came up with. As all kids do. Everybody remembers the opening of that crazy circus-like song, and then him riding his big wheels through the house. Then we got Tom and Jerry Kids Show. That's kind of self-explanatory. Tom and Jerry as kids. Literally cat and mouse game there with those two. Love that one. Then we got Tasmania, which I always remember watching in the afternoons. I never seen it in the morning. I always remembered it in the afternoons. 10, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. Never seen the cartoon. Never seen the movie. Then we got Little Shop of Horrors, which I've seen a couple previews for it, but never actually watched it. And I believe that was based on a movie too, but I never seen that. Then we got NBC. Back before it was strictly NBC, or Teen NBC. Later they call it TNBC because they were really trying to go after the teenagers. It seemed like they, all the other ones had the kids, and then you'd have the Disney stuff later on with ABC, and then NBC really tried to get the teen market. And even as a teen, I didn't really like that stuff because a lot of it was like basketball stuff, and I didn't care about that. Anyway, we start off with cartoons on here because they were still doing cartoons at this time. Space Cats, I've never seen that, but it sounds funny. Yo Yogi, which I'm guessing is trying to be some hip version of Yogi the Bear. Yo Yogi. Everybody remembers Yogi Bear and Boo Boo. And then we got Captain N and the new Super Mario World. I briefly remember Captain N, but I definitely love the new Super Mario World. Based on the Super Mario World game that that was out on Super Game Boy. What am I talking about? Super Nintendo. Love that game. And of course, if you're talking about that game, I love the version that came bundled with Mario and the Lost Levels, which I've talked about that before. That's probably my favorite video game all time, that bundle. And Pro Stars, I don't know what that is. Wish Kids starring Macaulay Culkin at 10:30. Was that like a Make-A-Wish thing? Or a movie preview? I don't know. Or maybe it was a show. I don't know. I have to look that up. If you've heard of Wish Kid with Macaulay Culkin, let me know. Obviously, everybody knows Macaulay Culkin. Especially around this time, 1992, Home Alone. Home Alone definitely been out. I believe the second one had probably been out. If you've heard of that Wish Kid starring Macaulay Culkin, let me know. Chip and Pepper's Cartoon Madness. I thought I was going to say Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, but which I didn't believe was a Saturday morning cartoon. I think that was an afternoon one. But anyway, Chip and Pepper's Cartoon Madness. Don't know what that is. Then an hour of Saved by the Bell. Love that show. Up into the new class, I watched that, and I watched a little bit of the college era. Then we got the NBA All-Star Stay in School Jam, which I'd never, like I said, I wasn't a basketball fan. And that is our Saturday morning cartoon lineup. That's, of course, before the WB, before they had a channel and got into the Saturday morning lineup. But now we're going to look at the Nickelodeon lineup, and that's a little different. It goes from midnight to midnight. So, of course, everybody knows at that time, I don't know now, Nickelodeon might be 24-hour cartoons now, I don't know. But at that time, Nick at Night was, huge on there. And, of course, that was on there for the parents when the kids went to sleep. But starting at midnight, we got the Donna Reed Show. A lot of these I've never watched now. The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, I've never watched. I know it had Bob Denver from Gilligan's Island on it, but I never watched it. Same with the Patty Duke Show. Mork and Mindy, seen a few episodes of that. From what I've seen, it was hilarious. Robin Williams, obviously. America Tonight, I don't know. And by Tonight, it has actual 2 in it. The Adventures of Superman, which I believe was the original Superman series with Christopher Reeves. Almost said Keanu Reeves. Wrong Reeves. Christopher Reeves' dad, George Reeves, I think his name? But I believe he was the original Superman in the old black and white TV show from 60s, I think. Then we got the Dick Van Dyke Show, which I never watched. Get Smart and Dragnet. I watched a little bit of those. Those are kind of funny. Basically what The Naked Gun movies were kind of spoofs of those. I love the Naked Gun movies. I'm actually looking forward to seeing the new one because I thought at first they were just like recasting Leslie Nielsen, but I think it's his son, so it's hopefully going to be good. It'll never be the same as with what Leslie Nielsen can do, but hopefully they can keep the same spirit. Anyway, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Love that. That's in the vein of the Twilight Zone. And then we got Mr. Ed. I was just talking about him the other day with my wife. The famous talking horse. Love Mr. Ed. It was... they've got some of the episode names, and I'll give them for the cartoons, but I hadn't been giving them here yet. This one's called The Wrestler. I'm going to have to go back and watch that, because I'm obsessed with wrestling. There was a wrestling... I just have a feeling that Mr. Ed wrestled somehow, or got involved in a match. I got to watch this. Mr. Ed the Wrestler. And then we got The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis again. And then, technically, Nickelodeon starts at 6, but still with a classic show, but definitely it was on there for the kids. Lassie. Love Lassie. The Little Bits I've never heard of. I don't think... they don't have episode names for all these. Sorry. Then we got Eureka's Castle. Man, I love that show. It was I believe it was Jim Henson, I believe. If I'm wrong on that, I'm not sure. But I know R.L. Stine was one of the creators, actually. I found that out when I was doing my top 50 Nickelodeon shows. I found out R.L. Stine was involved with it. I was like, wow, I can't believe that. And then looking at some of the crazy characters, like, yeah, I actually can believe it. But love Eureka's Castle. 7:30 Kids Court. I don't remember watching this, but I'm pretty sure it's a take on the People's Court just involving kids. It'd be interesting to see what their actual case is. Were they going to sue their mom for grounding them? Or the kid stole another kid's pencil and they're taking them to Kids Court? I'm going to have to look that up. Count Duckula. I never really watched that, but I've definitely heard of it. 8:30 Heathcliff. My favorite, between him and Garfield, they're always compared because they're orange funny cats. Heathcliff was always my favorite because I remember watching it on Nickelodeon. Of course, Garfield would be on Nickelodeon too, but Heathcliff was my favorite. Danger Mouse, I've heard of it, but don't actually remember watching it. Then we got another Yogi Bear. We got Nickelodeon's Most Wanted Yogi Bear, which was Nickelodeon put all their stuff all over it, and it was just the Yogi Bear cartoons. Then we got Adventures of Superman. I don't remember that being on at 10 and 10:30. I wonder if there was a certain reason those two were on. It was on for an hour. But anyway, that was on during Nickelodeon time. And then we've got a special... sorry, I got something on my teeth. We got a special NBA All-Star Double Dare. And with that NBA before... this was obviously NBA All-Star Month, which, I don't keep up with basketball, so I don't ever give basketball results. I'll give, the champions of the, I believe is it June, I think? Yeah, because obviously the NBA Finals are going on now. But I only know that because the Pacers in it, and everybody around here is going nuts over it. I only watch basketball in March during March Madness for the college teams. But anyway, NBA All-Star Double Dare, which I'm guessing was All-Stars for NBA teams on playing Double Dare, which would definitely be fun to watch. I love Double Dare. And then at 11:30 we got NBA Special. So I don't know what that is. Probably just showing the teams for kids. Put it in a kid way, sort of like they do now with the football games where you can watch the Nickelodeon version of the football game, or they had the one with the Simpsons. They had the Bengals game, Bengals against the Cowboys with the Simpsons, but you can only watch that so much. The gimmick of it gets old really quick when you switch back to the regular game. It's pretty cool for what it is, and definitely made for kids. Like I said, I try to watch it, but like I said, it's made for kids. Anyway, we got the NBA All-Star Stay in School Jam, which was on NBC. And it was on at noon. It's the same time as the other one. So maybe it was like simulcast with NBC, but definitely a good message there. Stay in school. I wish I would have listened to it. I ended up going back and getting my GED, but I'll probably talk about that in one of my podcasts. It wasn't in the 90s, but I may do one from the 2000s too at this point. It's way in the future. This series is always going to be about the 90s until I finish every single month and year. But then at 1, we've got an hour of Flipper. 2 episodes were Flipper's Hour of Peril, even though that was only a half hour, and Coral Fever. Obviously, I don't remember these, but, definitely love Flipper. Flipper and Lassie, obviously those two are compared because there's the same sort of type shows. You know, the kid or the animals save the day, help the kids. There's always that trope of Lassie helping little Timmy out of the well, but they actually said that was actually never an episode. Like, for some reason, that was like always thought of, you know, oh, Lassie's gonna help Timmy out of the well again this week, and it never actually happened. But anyway, it looks like they had some, yeah, it even says Golden Films. They had some Disney, but not Disney movies. You ever seen those? Like this first one. And it was only a half hour anyway, so it's not a movie. Snow White. This wasn't the Disney film. This was made by Golden Films. You ever see those VHS tapes or even DVDs or just on TV where it's the story because, you know, Disney didn't create the story. They just got famous for coming out with the most famous one. But anyway, they had Snow White, Rumpelstiltskin 2, which I didn't know they had a 2. Those were a half hour each, and then an hour Peter Pan, which I actually thought Disney owned, but I guess not. Unless I'm wrong, and those are, but I can't be because Snow White was longer than a half hour. Anyway, those are just, people would see them and call them rip-offs, but they're not really rip-offs, they're just not the more known, you know, the story is kind of basically public domain, I guess. You know, but, you know, they obviously weren't showing them on Nickelodeon because they didn't have a partnership with Disney. The first thing I think they ever did was when Disney bought out Doug, and then it went kind of down the tubes there. Doug was one of the original Nicktoons. But 4 o'clock, you can't do that on television. That was one of the original Nickelodeon shows. That was a Canadian sketch comedy series, kind of like All That would be later on. It's where Nickelodeon Slime was invented. Love that show. Get the Picture, game show hosted by Mike O'Malley. It's where they had pictures and you had to solve puzzles. It was a really cool game show. And then Family Double Dare at 5. And then one of my all-time favorites, I believe it was third on the list, I believe. Yeah, because Family Double Dare was second. Are You Afraid of the Dark was my top Nickelodeon show of all time. And coming in at 3, I tried to say 3 and third, it came out 3. Coming in third was Nick Arcade. Love that game show. Kids getting to go into video games and play video games and answer questions. It's just one of the perfect game shows you could have for Nickelodeon. Then at 6 we got Salute Your Shorts, which is the kids at summer camp. And the iconic song, It Makes Me Wanna Fart. Love that show. Welcome Freshman I never watched. I just, for some reason, never watched it. Big and original Nicktoons at 7, Rugrats. One of the 3 originals with Doug, which is next. And of course, Ren and Stimpy was the other 3. Rocko's Modern Life was number 4. And then we got Looney Tunes on Nick at Night. So they're crossing over into Nick at Night, I guess. Because, you know, adults, parents, kids, grandparents, everybody can watch Looney Tunes and remember it as far back. My great-great-grandparents were probably watching Looney Tunes. But yes, so we're back into Nick at Night, and we got Get Smart, F Troop, which I never really watched, Mork and Mindy, Dragnet, Green Acres. Oh no, that's literally, that song gets stuck in my head. I hear it every day in my head. Like I have TV themes on my computer, and sometimes I'll play, you know, because I put everything on random. But for the most part, that song would just pop into my head out of literally nowhere. And it drives me nuts. So it's in my head again now, thanks to this podcast. Anyway, we got Adventures of Superman, and we end the night with Alfred Hitchcock presents the episode The Right Kind of Medicine. So that is our Nickelodeon lineup, and I got one more topic on this kind of category before we go. Is TGIF. Of course, everybody remembers that from Friday nights. It was, you know, kids and mostly teenagers that watch those shows, and of course it's for families too. But first show, you know, the big show of the night was always the first show at 8 o'clock. You know, it ran from 8 to 10. But the big show was Family Matters, of course. Urkel went on there, and like, if Urkel hadn't been on there, I don't know if they'd have lasted as long. I know some people thought it got a little silly with, you know, the Stefan character and Urkel turning into this, and Myrtle and all the other stuff. But, you know, Urkel really gave that show longevity. Anyway, they were on season 3 at the time. Second show was Step by Step. Love that show. They were still in their first season. Of course, that was made by the same creators of Family Matters. And in the first season, they even had a crossover with Urkel on there, just kind of give them the rub, as they call it in wrestling. To get people to watch. You need to watch this show, Urkel. And get them hooked on that. I believe that was the only time there was a crossover there. And then the third show was Baby Talk, which was actually a TV series spun off of the Look Who's Talking movie series. It wasn't the same characters, but it's kind of spun off. They were in their second and final season of that. And then one I've never heard of, or if I have, I'd forgotten about it, but I don't remember seeing it at all, is called Billy. It was a spin-off of Head of the Class, which I never watched that either. They were in their one and only season. It had low ratings. They got canceled. But I'm going to move into music now. You can tell by that hat, my favorite kind of music was country. But I do give the pop results of the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Number one for a week was Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, George Michael and Elton John. Strangely, I know that song is a Garth Brooks song. I know he didn't make it, obviously, first. But he released the Blame It All on My Roots album collection, and it was on one of the CDs. I believe it was Classic Rock, I think. And I've heard the Elton John version. I don't know if I've ever heard the version with him and George Michael, because I believe it was a song from the 70s, I believe, originally by Elton John. Anyway, that was number one for a week. And then number one for 3 weeks is... You couldn't escape this song in the 90s. I never listened to pop or rap or anything like that, and I heard this song all the time, which I didn't even know who it was by at the time. I learned later on, but Right Said Fred. I'm too sexy. Everyone knows that's stupid. I'm sorry I call it stupid, but it's dumb. That song is so stupid. Sounds like a robot rapping it or singing it, whatever they call it. Anyway, it was number one for 3 weeks. And the longevity of that song lasted way past that. And then a song called To Be With You by Mr. Big, which I've never heard, was number one for 1 week. And also 2 weeks in March, so 3 weeks total. But of course, I was listening to the American Country Countdown with Bob Kingsley every Sunday morning from 9 to noon, usually with a tape ready to record it. I only had so many cassette tapes, so usually can't tell you how many times I recorded over things. And then later on be mad because I lost a song because of it. I wish I would have had an unlimited supply of cassette tapes, especially to have now and listen to. That would be so cool. Because I got a tape player in the van, and I've got a whole bag of tapes that I found at Goodwill. I just keep adding to the collection. I got a tape and CD player. I don't ever even hook my phone up to the thing anymore. I just listen to the good old stuff. Anyway, number one for 2 weeks was Doug Stone, A Jukebox with a Country Song. I love that. That's like a parody. This guy, he's used to going to country bars and stuff, and he goes to his favorite one, and it's been bought out, and it's turned into this like upscale place, where there's someone that's playing records too fast, too loud, and too long, as he says, and they replaced the bar with all these fancy tables, and he just wants a jukebox with a country song. Number one for 3 weeks, plus 1 week in March to make 4 total, is Garth Brooks' What She's Doing Now. Great song from the Rope in the Wind album. And I'll be talking about Garth in just a second here. But that was... Rope in the Wind was probably his biggest album ever. I definitely remember that. It's like, the No Fences, which is the second album, made him a star. This Rope in the Wind made him a superstar. And actually what really sent him over the top is what I'm talking about next. It's actually something I forgot to talk about, because the last time I did one from 1992, I did January, which was episode 25, so 8 before this. And I actually forgot to look at when this special came out. But anyway, it's the TV special on NBC. It's a concert special from Garth Brooks. It's called This Is Garth Brooks. It was from Reunion, I think it was Reunion Stadium in Texas. I don't know if it was Houston or Dallas. I don't know exactly. I know the second one he was in. Was it a Reunion there? If I'm wrong about the place. Anyway, it was his very first concert, and I remember vividly. This was the time I was living with my mom, and I would go visit my dad on the weekends at this time. I remember vividly watching this over there, and then of course my grandpa videotaped everything, including the kids. He always had his video camera running. This is exactly where I got my love of cameras from. But of course, we would record stuff off TV all the time too. He had like 2 VCRs, and these were like during the days of VCRs were expensive. So he put some money on his cameras of VCRs. But this special, I remember watching it and then actually recording it onto a tape. You know, playing it. It'd play through the speakers, and I would record it onto a tape so I could take it home and listen to it because we didn't have a VCR at my mom's. But this concert special was so good, like it blew the roof off of what people thought country music was. You know, just, and there's nothing wrong with it. George Strait does this, and he is a superstar, and people pay just to see him stand there and sing for 3 hours and not get bored. But for those that didn't like that or didn't like the older stuff, Garth Brooks showed that country doesn't have to just be that. It can be a show. He was flying around on stage. And the second one of this, he actually went flying literally through the air at a huge football stadium. I don't know how he got the guts to do that, but he was crazy. Jumping on the ladders, jumping off the stage, crowd surfing at some points, fire, rain effects. But this first one started it off big. Start off the I'll go through the rundown of the song. Start off the show with the song from his first album. It was actually his very first, or not his first. I don't remember. It might have been his first single, but it was the first song on the album for sure. Not Counting You. Then went into Rodeo. Definitely a big song. Two of a Kind, Working on a Full House. Another classic. We Bury the Hatchet was like an album track from Rope in the Wind. It was one of my favorite songs. I've told the story before. He says a part in the song called "I Was Kissing on Cindy," and when I was listening to this, I was like had a crush on this girl named Cindy in 3rd grade. You know, from the end of 2nd to beginning of 3rd before we moved. But yeah, and I played that song for her, and she always laughed, and I like blushed when it came on. Like, I want to be kissing on Cindy. You know, you're in 3rd grade. You know, you either think girls have cooties, or you know, you want to try to kiss them or something. But of course, that never happened. But anyway, The Thunder Rolls, where he debuted the 3rd verse of the song, you know, which was like mind-blowing at the time. You know, basically the 3rd verse, she kills the guy. Because if you watch this, if you just listen to the song, it seems to be just about cheating. But if you watch the video, the guy's abusive too. So the 3rd verse kind of is written on there, kind of the video, because the video was famously like banned because of the violence. And Garth Brooks actually put on a fake beard and hair and actually played the main guy in the video, and it got banned on MTV, or not banned on all the country channels, and it actually showed it on MTV. That was kind of where the crossover with him started. And then we got The River, great, one of his greatest, and Much Too Young, his very first #1 song. Can't say enough good things about Much Too Young. I love that song. And then What She's Doing Now, which was #1 at this time. So great timing. Papa Love Mama, that's a fun song. If Tomorrow Never Comes, love that song, such a great message. Shameless, the Billy Joel song that never a hit for him, but he heard it. You know, he told the story about having you know, those 99, almost like 99 CDs for 90. It was more like 10 CDs for a penny or something, or for 99 cents. And you know, you get all these CDs, or sometimes it was free. And I get all this free music. Of course, the catch was you had to agree to buy a certain amount each year, or you know, during the year, and they'd automatically send you one the next month. And it wasn't like today where you could just easily cancel. You got to call and remember to do it. So if they send it to you, and then there's so many people that got so many free CDs that never paid that stuff off. Those places went out of business. Columbia House, I know there was one or two. I think BGM might have been one of them, but Columbia House definitely was the biggest. But anyway, that's where I actually got a few tapes from, and CDs later on. But anyway, he said that he got one of those of Billy Joel, like he was on the road and came home and was there and listened to it and wanted to do the song, and Shameless became one of his biggest songs ever. And definitely the song that for sure crossed him over. It started getting play on pop radio with that song. And then Friends in Low Places, probably the song he's most well known for. And this concert is most well known for that 3rd verse that came, where he basically reworks the 2nd verse. If you've never heard that, definitely look it up. They actually released the live version of that to radio. Well, actually, I didn't even release it. They were actually playing that, based, like, the next night. I remember vividly hearing on WUBE B105, our local Cincinnati radio station. I vividly remember, sorry, I'm looking at the time, 35 minutes. Sorry, I've been spending forever on the first two topics. Anyway, I vividly remember them playing that live version the very next day, and I even remember hearing it at school and telling all my friends, I watched that last night, and they're like, we don't care, because country wasn't cool then. This actually made country cool. But anyway, then like Garth normally does, he ends the show with the dance, which he calls his favorite song of his that he's ever done, which, is a great message in that song. And then 2 encores. This is the first time I'd heard the Billy Joel song, You May Be Right, which I love. I actually got it in my intermission playlist for wrestling. Not the Garth Brooks version, because I only have the live. It kind of don't play well to play live songs there at wrestling. It's just music before the show anyway, or during intermission. So I don't get to put as many songs in there as I want to, but I do slip a few in. And my buddy Vern at wrestling always play Alabama music. Take this job and shove it. So I'll play them for him. But anyway, that You May Be Right, and he goes nuts at this song, jumping all over stage, pouring bottles of water on himself. And then he ends up with the I believe it's the Georgia Satellite song, Keep Your Hands to Yourself. Just like a crazy version. He's like, his voice is almost gone. He's out of breath from all the stuff, but it just has so much fun. I love that time period, and especially that concert. This is Garth Brooks. I believe they have that on YouTube. Look it up. That concert's amazing. But during this time, I was living with my mom, and we were living in Mount Carmel. It's a little town in Claremont County, which is, I know most people on here, they know I lived in Cincinnati, or the suburb, or whatever we want to call it, Norwood. But for a time I lived with my granny in Newtown, Ohio, which was in Claremont County, and also Mount Carmel, which was, I don't know exactly how far it was. It was closer to my granny's house than we were in Norwood later on. But anyway, that's where we lived. It was me, my mom, my brother Josh, and my brother Travis had just turned 1 in this month, because he was born in February '91. But we spent tons of time. Mom got us a Nintendo, which had been out for a while. Super Nintendo was out at this point, but when we got that Nintendo, man, it was on. We were playing it all the time. Of course, the original game that the Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt combo, play that all the time. That stupid dog wanted to shoot him so bad for laughing at us. No offense to all my dogs, but wanted to kill that dog on there. But of course, when we had the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, and that freaking water level and getting shocked, that game was so hard. And there was a few other games, but the other one I remember vividly was the Friday the 13th game, which I loved. I know it gets crap, and it's not the best game, and doesn't really feel like a Friday the 13th movie, but it was great. And half the time I didn't even know what I was doing on there. I would just walk around trying to find Jason. Sometimes find him, he'd kill me. I'd go in the room and find his mom's head, and she'd kill me. And of course, just the game gets so much crap, but it's classic. That one they came out with, I won't say recently, but it was like 10 years ago, I believe, is when it came out. The one that I have it on PS4. They shut the servers down. I don't even know what you can do on it anymore. But anyway, I wasn't very good at that at all. I'm not good at those games. That's why I don't play the Call of Duty games. I suck at it. I end up trying to shoot my own team or get myself killed. But I actually prefer the old Nintendo game to that. But you could actually, there was a skin in that where you could be Jason from that game. The green skin and the purple. I love that game. Like I said, I never knew what I was doing, what to do with the items, where to get them. I've got it on emulator now, and if you guys want me to on my video game series, I might play that. I've been playing the Turtles for PS4, the Shredder's Revenge. I've started that, and also replaying the Sonic Adventure games, and I'm going to do Sonic Adventure 2 once I beat Sonic Adventure. I got for PS3, but of course everybody knows that from Dreamcast. But if you guys want to see me play that, I've got that on there. I've got the Nightmare on Elm Street game too. Slaughterhouse, that's a creepy game I discovered playing on the emulator for original Nintendo. But anyway, that's just some memories of me and my brother playing those games. You know, of course, Josh was, how old was Josh then? 1, 2, 3, 4. He was turning 4 that year, so of course he didn't have as much experience with that. You know, later on he'd get a PS2 and, you know, be playing all those games on there, and I'd be kind of out of touch with that, even though I still like to play it. I was always playing SmackDown versus Raw and SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, Here Comes the Pain, and those. But yeah, just at that time, like I said, I'm sure there was other games. I think there was a baseball or a football game. I don't think we had a wrestling game, but you know, we had a few games. But you know, as kids, you know, that's all you need, and you got to have the actual full games. Then you didn't have to get parts and, you know, subscribe to this plan for this, or PlayStation Plus for this, or oh, you got to download all these extras and these bonus characters. You know, none of that. Then you get the full game. It still costs a lot then. Everybody thinks, you know, the prices now. They were still going $50, $60, $70 for games then, depending on what year it was and when the game came out, which is kind of weird to think about for such low quality graphics and limited gameplay that they costed that much. But you know, that's the way it's always been. So if anybody complains about game prices these days, the game prices is not really where to complain. It's the fact that you're paying that, but you're still not getting the full game. You still got to pay more for this, especially on wrestling. You can pay, which I think it's cool that you can pay to unlock like the whole game, which I used to be able to do on the 2K games. I don't know if they still do that, which I think is cool. I think games should be to where, you know, they should be, you know, there's skill involved, but if you want to turn all that off and just beat the game all at once, it should let you, you know, get all the stuff in it, you know. You know, you own the game, and in fact, if you do that, the people might get bored, they might go out and buy other games. But, you know, anyway, that's a whole thing about that. I want to get into a feature I've started recently on here, going back and looking up the old kids' meal toys. Everybody remembers those. Of course, the Happy Meals are the most famous. But just become fascinated by looking back at these old toys, and I found another fandom on the fandom website. They'd actually list these toys that came out, you know, some of them by month, so that way I can put them on the list, because I don't want to do them if it just lists the year, because you know, I'm trying to keep everything, you know, month by month, and so I don't repeat myself. Anyway, we're gonna start off with McDonald's toys. They had Mystery of the Lost Arches toys. These kind of look like a spoof of like the Indiana Jones, and if you see me looking over, I did do some little research on these, because obviously we didn't get to eat many Happy Meals and kids meals and stuff. You know, where we got to go out, it would be like a special treat, especially during these days. With my mom, we never had money to go out. You know, she was always making supper at home for us, and you know, we didn't get to go out a lot. You know, but looking back, I definitely appreciate everything Mom did. You know, I don't. If I did, I'm sorry. I don't remember complaining we didn't get to eat out a lot. If I did, like, I'm completely sorry, Mom. I get it now. Especially after having kids, I get it now. But anyway, these Mystery of the Lost Arches toys, like I said, they look like a spoof of Indiana Jones. There was a set of 4 of them, and these things are pretty cool. They had a flashlight that was also a telescope, a camera that was like it said a magic lens camera, but I'm not exactly sure what it does. A magnifying glass. It looks like a mini cassette player. You know those little mini cassette that you just, like a voice recorder type things. And an early 90s cell phone. You know, the cellular phone from the early 90s. Those big things. You know, you see Paul Heyman hit people with them on wrestling. But anyway, it was really a periscope is what it was, because it wasn't really a phone. Anyway, I've actually looked these things up. You can find this complete set of these for only $10 on eBay. Which, that's crazy, because some of the prices are like, I know the rare ones are ridiculous, but you know, $10 for a whole set of those, that's pretty cool. And depending on what time of the month, sometimes there would be different releases in the month. Like McDonald's also had Potato Head kids toys, which are like the Mr. Potato. They were made by Play School, and you know, you remember Mr. Potato Heads. Well, these were little, and these were like kids. Almost reminds me of like the Garbage Pail Kids, but they were like potato heads. Not sure how many was in a full set, but there's a nearly complete set of 7 that are available on eBay for $69. So obviously these are one of their more rare ones. And then I found some that were only in select regions, not in my region. So I don't know. I guess we would have had the Lost Arches and the Potato Heads. But select regions had different toys such as crayon squeeze bottles, the real Ghostbusters line of toys, water games, Wild Friends, and Yo Yogi, which we'd seen was the NBC's Yogi Bear cartoon. Wendy's had something called Wild Games. It was a set of 6, and they were like little kids games. Like there's 2 different mini pinball games. You know, you could pull the little thing and the little ball. It was like this little plastic container. It was really small. They had a little plush ball. It was for the little toddlers because you know sometimes they'd have like little kids toys. You know, so it'd be something that they really wouldn't choke on. A couple toys where the goal was to get like you move the things around. You got to try to get all the fries back in the fry box on one of them. And then there was like a basketball skill game. I guess it like I don't know if it was one of them water ones where you push it and it makes it go up. You know what I'm talking about, the rings and the fish thing. There's been 100 versions of them. Anyway, you can find a almost complete set. The only thing it don't have is the basketball game for $15 on eBay. And I'm not selling any of these. This isn't an advertisement. I'm just putting it out there. If any of this stuff interests you or you're like, hey, I remember that, you could actually go and purchase these. I don't plan on doing it because I don't have a place to display collectibles, and I don't want to just get them and put them in a drawer. And I don't have the money for it. But Wendy's also had speed bumpers. These were these like almost like heavy plastic, but they were those pullback cars. You know, you pull them back, and they would go, but not very well on a carpet floor, as you found out as a kid. And there's a listing on eBay where they have select cars for like $2 a piece. They don't have the whole set, but you can get a car for $2 a piece. That's pretty cool. Pizza Hut had Beauty and the Beast puppets. And there was like little hand puppets, and I believe they were plastic. They featured Belle, the Beast, and I don't know the names of the other two, the teacup and the clock. But you can find all 4 for only $13 on eBay. You know, for Disney collectors or just kids toy collectors, that's a heck of a deal. And then Taco Bell had these really neat looking things. They were fold together vehicles. They were like cardboard, and you would flat sheet of cardboard, and you would fold them and make vehicles out of them. There's 4 of them. They had a convertible, a plane, a boat, and a bus, and they all had Taco Bell stuff on it. It looked like the bus was like a Taco Bell bus. I would have loved to go on the Taco Bell bus. But anyway, you can find a full set of these, and they've never actually even been put together. They're still flat for $22 on eBay, and I don't know if you should try to put them together because they might be so old that you try and they just break or turn to dust. But I don't know. But anyway, those are some pretty cool kids' toys, and I haven't done that. I wish I would have started that when I started the series because I'm sure there's some that I've missed. But anyway, I want to move on. We got one news item this week about Jeffrey Dahmer, our old buddy. Not really. He was sentenced to life in prison in this month. He tried to plead insanity, but I guess it was proved he was sane. But I say he's not sane, but I also say he shouldn't get away with it just because he was insane. Like, he needs locked away and maximum security of a prison, not just the loony bin. Anyway, I think he said he killed like 15 boys during his reign of terror, and who knows how many more that they hadn't found. Just bad guy. And of course, there's all these movies, and it's almost like people are like almost making him some mythic figure these days. No, he's a piece of crap serial killer who probably should have gotten the death penalty, but that's, I don't know if it wasn't available or whatever reason. Anyway, I thought I'd talk a little bit about TV. There's no debuts or shows ending at this time. February was it was right before sweeps month, and, the season finales. It's kind of like in the middle of the, February is kind of, they had new shows on, but it wasn't like the most exciting time. They didn't really start new shows or end shows during February. But I want to talk about some of the TV shows. I call them the stay home from school sick shows. Everybody remembers those. Jerry Springer's one, but that's later on. That's not during this time period. That was definitely one that was always on during that. But the number one was always Price is Right. 11 o'clock at least our time, on CBS. Bob Barker, oh, man, loved him as a host. I love Drew Carey and all the stuff he's done, but, it's just, I don't know, something about him being the host doesn't seem right. Not just because it's not Bob Barker. He just never seems that enthusiastic. Like, it's almost like he doesn't want to be there. It's just like, well, I got to do this because he's probably getting paid a ton for it. I don't know, it's just something always struck me odd about him being the host. Like, he doesn't seem to really, I don't know. It might just be me. He might actually enjoy it. I don't know. But anyway, Bob Barker, greatest. I think there was another host before him, like back in the 50s or 60s. I believe he took over, he might have been the second host of the show, but of course he was on there longest from, I think, the 70s on. And of course, Plinko, my favorite game, and a lot of people's favorite game on there. A lot of them are fun, though, and of course, everybody knows that show. And then Family Feud was always on during this time. It was usually, during this time, it was the Ray Combs version. He was actually from Cincinnati, and a sad story, he actually committed suicide. Maybe he had like 5 or 6 kids, just like with Robin Williams, you never know really what's going on. The guy looked like a happy guy all the time, and, looked like he had a good life, but, you never really know. Like I said, he was from Cincinnati, so that one hit kind of hard when I found out about him. Classic Concentration, that was hosted by Alex Trebek. Of course, everybody knows him from Jeopardy. But that game where you turn over 2 things.
Do you like scary movies?
Yes, I do, but I'm not talking about that right now. Got an email or something. But, Classic Concentration, it was kind of like the matching game, but for the prize level, but also you had to turn over squares, and they'd have, there's a name for what it is, and I can't think of it, but anyway, there's a picture that's revealed by other pictures and like letters, and you got to figure out, it's like a sentence or a phrase by looking at the pictures, and you got to figure it out, but you got to uncover the squares first. It was a pretty cool game show. I remember it being on all the time. And then of course, if you're home from school and you had cable, you'd either watch Nickelodeon a lot, or USA Cartoon Express would be on during the day on the USA Network. And of course, this was before Cartoon Network. I never really watched Cartoon Network a ton. I know, Shoot Me, another one I never really watched. But if it had been on during this time, I probably would have gotten into it and would have watched it and had fond memories of it. But I just, I have no. I remember when it started, it was a huge deal, and I remember watching Johnny Quest on there and some of that stuff and liking it. But it was the stuff on Nickelodeon was more up my alley because I'd been watching it forever. And of course, there's the PBS shows, Wishbone, Reading Rainbow. My God, what could I say? What more can I say about that? That show was just amazing. Of course, the morning would be Barney and that stuff. Bob Ross was on. I believe he was on more. I know in recent years, if he's even still on now, they had him on Saturday mornings. I know he's passed away. I don't mean he's actually on. I just mean reruns. But I believe they showed him daily at this time, and just like, it don't matter if you're 5 years old or 105. Bob Ross and his paintings and just him talking can captivate you. Supermarket Sweep is another one. I just watched a couple episodes of that yesterday. It's actually hard to watch and play the guess. If you play along with the game show, you're guessing like how much did this cost? Because I think it was which of these products are under $1, and it was a thing of bagels, and there was Linder's bagels, so they were a name brand, and they were 99 cents for a whole bag of bagels. And me and my wife were like, 99 cents for bagels? Because they're like $5, $6 now. Even the generics are kind of $3 or $4. So it's hard to go back and watch those and actually guess accurately. But of course, everybody remembers Supermarket Sweep. The best part, of course, was the running around shopping. Everybody wanted to do that. Kid, adult. Of course, I'm sure the adults watching it got more out of it. Probably just like they're watching like, why can't I just do that? I don't even care about prizes or nothing. I just want to get all this food for my family. But anyway, we'll move into sports. Not a whole lot to talk about during this time because it's February. Again, it's kind of a dead time, like as far as for things happening. Football season had just finished. They actually had the Pro Bowl, and this was back during when they had the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl. They eventually went on to do it the week before, you know, that because they had 2 weeks from the championship games to the Super Bowl, so they did the Pro Bowl in the middle. But that was, you know, you never had the teams from the Super Bowl playing in the Pro Bowl because they didn't want to get injured. So now they got the Pro Bowl games, which I like. It's just they're on ESPN. I don't have cable, so I haven't got to watch them the last couple of years. I actually like them in the flag football. I think it's kind of different. You know, gives a different slant to football stuff, more of a skills challenges and stuff. But of the 2 Pro Bowls, I actually liked the way they used to do the format where they'd have it after the Super Bowl. You know, so the Super Bowl's over, you're not risking injury, and of course there's a lot of money on the line to give them, you know, reason to actually. And they actually played football then, like. There was quite a few like serious injuries during the Pro Bowl, so they were actually trying. Anyway, the NFC beat the NFC beat the AFC 21-15 in Hawaii, and of course that was where the Pro Bowl was forever. You know, I don't remember when they stopped or when they started that, but I remember for the longest time it was in Hawaii. Michael Irvin of the Cowboys was the MVP, and the only Bengal that went to the Pro Bowl was our offensive tackle Anthony Munoz. Was our only representative. But NASCAR, they only had 1 race, and of course that NASCAR always starts in February with the Daytona 500, which is won by Davey Allison, which his father had actually won that race too, Bobby Allison. This was actually Richard Petty's final Daytona 500, so that was definitely significant for that. And of course this was NASCAR's a long season from February to November. Alan Kulwicki won his championship that year. And the only news on baseball, you know, they're getting ready for spring training, was this is a crazy stat. On February 1st, Barry Bonds signed what this time he signed with the Pirates. That was the team he was with, but he signed a new contract. At the time, this was the largest contract in MLB history, $4.7 million. I just find that crazy because the contracts they have these days. $500-600 million spread over years, but still the massive contracts. I think the Dodgers, between Ohtani and another pitcher from Japan, I think I heard him say, between the two, it was over $1 billion between 2 people, and Ohtani's contract was, you know, in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But like, imagine telling them like 4.7 million is nothing. Someday 2 players are going to cost a team at over $1 billion. Just baseball's changed. One final thing to talk about though is wrestling. Love wrestling, obviously. Of course, this is February, right after the Royal Rumble for WWF, getting ready for WrestleMania 8, which actually happened in Indianapolis. I live in Indiana now, but I wasn't then, obviously. But the only pay-per-view this month was WCW Superbrawl. This was the second one. It was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, February 29th. That's right, this was a leap year. This is also Olympic year. So every year the Summer Olympics happen, there's a leap year. Just so you know. Anyway, on the show, Brian Pillman defeated Jushin Thunder Liger for the WCW Light Heavyweight title. Of course, this was before the Cruiserweight title. They started a light heavyweight division, but didn't really put much into it. It wasn't until Eric Bischoff took over and he was, you know, really looking to make things exciting that they brought that sort of championship. They brought the Cruiserweight title back instead of just the light heavyweight title. And, you know, the Cruiserweight division, you know, defined WCW for a while. But the main event, Sting defeated WCW World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger for the title. And this was actually Lex Luger's last show with WCW. He was going to the WWF, well actually not even to the WWF, to the, I can't remember what it was called, but the WWF had their bodybuilding league that they started and it kind of failed after a while. But Lex Luger was like the big face of it. And like when that went out of business, they're like, well, I guess I'm wrestling again. You know, because Lex Luger famously, you know, didn't grow up a wrestling fan, was really only doing it for the money. Obviously liked bodybuilding more than wrestling. Yeah, he was just inducted in the Hall of Fame this year, and he's talked about how he's really grown to appreciate and love wrestling and wrestling fans, you know, later on. But, you know, but at this time, he really, you know, it was just a job for him. And you could tell I think that's why he never became a massive star that someone of his body build should have been able to. You know, I think if he would have had the right attitude for it, yeah, he could have been a bigger star than what he was, and he was a pretty big star anyway. But anyway, he would go back to WCW eventually. The very first Monday Nitro, I think it was like, this is 92 to 3.5 years later, and you know, the first shot fired in the Monday Night Wars was pretty much Lex Luger showing up, because he had a handshake deal with Vince, you know, before Vince gave out contracts and stuff, and you know, showed up on Nitro, and nobody knew. You know, everybody at WWF thought he was still there. But anyway, WWF Saturday Night's Main Event was this month. It was actually their first one that was aired on Fox. They'd previously been on NBC. It was recorded in January, but aired February 8th from Lubbock, Texas. Hulk Hogan and Sid Justice defeated Ric Flair and Undertaker by disqualification. And in the main event, Macho Man Randy Savage defeated Jake the Snake Roberts. Not too long after this, Sid Justice would do a full heel turn. Of course, he famously threw Hogan out during a Royal Rumble, and Hogan got all mad and pulled him out. But they were still friends, and of course this would turn him heel. And of course, everybody knows him more as Psycho Sid or Sid Vicious. But he was Sid Justice at this time. Vince decided that this massive guy that looked like he could kill everybody was going to be a face. They should have made him heel from the beginning. But anyway, he would do a full heel turn. And then right at the kind of the end of this show, which they didn't show till the next week, but Undertaker kind of started to turn face. Like I said, Jake the Snake was feuding with Macho Man. Actually went backstage. He was going to hit Miss Elizabeth with the chair, and Undertaker stopped him, and that led to their match at WrestleMania. And then Undertaker, you know, people were already cheering for Undertaker anyway. His character was so cool. It was, even though he was a bad guy, it was hard to hate. So you know, he basically became a face because everybody wanted him to be. But significant in this month, specifically on February 25th, ECW was started. It was started as Eastern Championship Wrestling. It was known originally as the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. I can't remember the guy who had started it, but he was partners with Todd Gordon. He ended up selling his part of the company to Todd Gordon, and he started the ECW, the Eastern Championship Wrestling. And then Todd Gordon would hire Eddie Gilbert to be the booker, whatever a booker is, the booker of the company. And they kind of had a falling out. So in September of that year, Todd Gordon replaces him with Paul Heyman, and the rest you can say is history. Paul Heyman ended up getting, you know, control. I can't remember exactly how he got the company, but you know, famously they turned it into Extreme Championship Wrestling, and they were off from there. But also on this same day as that happened, Stevie Richards actually got his start in wrestling. He started at the TWA, the ECW, had a few matches there, and then kind of went off in the independent scene for a couple years. And then when he came back, of course, he was famously the lackey for Raven, and you know, the Raven's Flock, and you know, but his career started the same day as ECW started, which is pretty cool. Couple title changes in the month. February 17th, Terry Taylor and Greg Valentine won the WCW US tag team titles, because they had those then, from Big Josh and Ron Simmons. That's a weird team. Of course, Big Josh would go on to be Doink the Clown, and Ron Simmons was going to be Ron Simmons and Farouk. But they won that on an episode of World Championship Wrestling, because before they were known as WCW, and they were just like the Jim Crockett Promotions, and everybody just called them the NWA. They weren't the whole NWA, but by this time they were the biggest territory in there, and people were just calling them the NWA. But anyway, the show was called World Championship Wrestling, and once Turner bought the company from Jim Crockett, he called it WCW, but at the time they still had the show, so WCW was on WCW. Anyway, Money Inc., which was Ted DiBiase and IRS, they defeated WWF Tag Team Champions Legion of Doom at a house show to win the titles. And speaking of $1 Million Man, his $1 Million title, which wasn't officially recognized, you know, it's just a title he had created, you know, with the dollar signs with the diamonds, and he famously feuded with Virgil over it. Anyway, he had the title, and once he won the tag team titles, he kind of just, you know, he officially dropped the $1 Million title, And they'd bring that back later on, most famously a couple times, but the first time they brought it back was when they brought in Steve Austin to be the ringmaster. DiBiase was his manager, so they gave him the title. But yeah, that was definitely a one of those. Like I said, it wasn't an official title, but it was still defended like it was. Definitely an iconic looking belt. I think it was worth $10,000 worth of diamonds. They kept it in the safe and everything else. But sad bit of news to end it with. Not really sad, but I guess for some people that grew up watching him, on February 25th, Gene Kiniski retired after having a 40-year career. Of course, famous in the AWA and NWA days. One of those pioneers of early wrestling. But that's pretty much the end of the podcast. Sorry I talked your head off, as I always do. Next episode is going to be number 34, and we're actually staying in the same year for once. I've done that a couple times, but more often than not, we'll jump around. But we're actually jumping ahead by 7 months. I think 7? No, 9 months. So we're going to November of 1992. I'm laughing because if for some reason in February 1992 you became pregnant, when we get to November when you had your baby, that's our next podcast. Anyway, it's going to be our 7th trip through 1992. I was 8 at this time, about to turn 9 the very next month, and I was in 3rd grade, and we were we'd moved to Norwood. I don't remember the exact time period. We'd either just moved there, or just about to move there, or move there that month. One of those 3. But anyway, I'll talk a little bit about the neighborhood there and everything else. But whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, or you're listening to it on Spotify, thank you so much for your support. Just love talking about my favorite time period, and I hope you guys love reminiscing, and hopefully it brought back a whole bunch of memories for you of different things. And maybe you guys want to start a podcast about the 90s. I'd watch it, and it's always great to hear other people's experiences, and I'll probably hear you say something, and I'll be like, wow, I can't remember, I forgot about that. It's all about just spreading my love of all things the 90s. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.